Another Amicus anthology crosses my desk. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I review another Amicus anthology horror, this time from 1971. This is The House That Dripped Blood. Now, I've done Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, I've done Tales from the Crypt, I've done The Vault of Horror, and now it's time for this one. And I admit, I'm really getting into these. I really enjoy them. I have a lot of fun with them. There's a timeless sense of whimsy and terror to them that I really, really enjoy. And with names like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and so on, I mean, how could I resist? So decided to give this one a whirl, and what I found was a movie that I liked a hair less than Tales from the Crypt, but a fair bit more than The Vault of Horror, which was kind of its spiritual successor there. So this is made up of 4 segments that are kind of tied together with a central storyline of a police investigation into a missing actor. The last known whereabouts was he rented a house to stay in while he was shooting a production of a vampire film, and goes missing. And in learning about the details of the case, they learn more about the house itself and other stories that have happened within its walls. And that's where the remainder of the stories come from. So we have A Method for Murder, which it was absolutely my favorite. This had Denholm Elliott in it, who you may know as Marcus Brody in the Indiana Jones films, as an author who rents the house to kind of, he's a horror writer, and he decides, okay, rent a house, kind of get away from it, cure his writer's block, bring his wife along, and really focus on this character that he envisioned. And in doing so, he starts to kind of evidently fall into some sort of madness where he is starting to see his character, this strangler, out in the real world, and it starts to haunt him. The way that this one was done was just phenomenal to me. Denholm Elliott really sold the performance, but to me, the editing choices that were taking place to sell the storyline, perception, different aspects of perception really, really made this worth it. And it was absolutely my favorite. It actually had moments in here of really, really scaring me, and I loved it for that. Waxworks, which is the story that involves Peter Cushing as Philip, who is renting the house, and in going out into town, he finds a wax museum and finds a familiar face within there, and things kind of start taking off from there in a horrific fashion. This is there's aspects of this that we've seen a few times before, and nothing terribly wonderfully creative, and honestly a little bit too long for the substance that it actually had. But regardless, Peter Cushing did a great job in it, and I don't really have a whole lot of complaints about it. For me, it just was a little bit less original, a little bit overly long, but still worth watching. Sweets to the Sweets. This is the storyline with Christopher Lee in it, who plays Reed, and he has his daughter, and he hires on a full-time nanny to stay and educate his daughter. He doesn't want her sent to schools. He doesn't want her playing with toys. He doesn't want her interacting in a way that any normal girl would. And the nanny has to kind of work within these confines and question them, but at the same time stretching those rules and figuring out the horrific nature of why those rules are in place. This was a very, very well done storyline. It was honestly a fairly mediocre concept, but it was elevated greatly by the performances of the 3 actors, Christopher Lee, Nairi Dawn Porter, and Chloe Franks. All of them did a great job playing off of each other, and that is what really sold Sweets to the Sweet. And then the last storyline was actually involving the actor that was missing in the main storyline, or the tied together element there, the Cloak. This one had John Pertwee, which is another doctor that some of these Amicus productions seem to enjoy starring Doctor Who actors in it. This was my least favorite of the lot. That was still enjoyable, but it was a little bit it had some silliness to it that really wasn't to my taste, but I still enjoyed it. It wasn't a bad entry. It was just simply, out of a lineup of really great ones, my least favorite of them. So I'm going to go and throw up all the scores here. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And all of these scores kind of wind up, again, it kind of follows the theme here of in between my feelings of Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror. Altogether, I think ultimately what it comes down to is the acting performances are not surprisingly wonderful. You have some really seasoned veteran actors in here that existed in a time where horror was nothing to be shied away from, that it was something that was still fun and sophisticated in its own way. Just because you were an A-list actor doesn't mean you necessarily shied away from horror films like this, and they brought some great performances to the screen here. So even if things were a little bit lackluster in terms of plot concepts or even dialogue writing on the script, it was really brought to life and hammered home well by the performances, and that alone is what I think makes this worth it, and why I'm going to keep coming back to the Amicus anthology films. I just love the performances. They dig their teeth in, and they really sell them well. So that's ultimately what this comes down to, is if you have seen any one of these movies, then you generally get the idea of what they're trying to come across with and what the rest of them will be bringing to the table in various levels of quality, but regardless, it's the same throughout, of these tales of macabre horrors told well and acted phenomenally by A-list actors. So I have no complaints, and I'm going to keep going back to the Amicus anthologies. So, but that should about do it. That's The House That Dripped Blood and my review of it, 1971. I really thank you for joining me here today. If you like these videos, please click like and subscribe. And if you want to support me further, my Patreon link is below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.